Welcome to NCBI Labs. So it's good to be back for another live event this week. We hope you've been enjoying our weekly events as well, and it's certainly been good to be able to cover so many subjects in such a short space of time over the last few months. But before we start today's show, we just want to mention a couple of things to you to keep you informed of a few things that are in store over the coming weeks. First of all, we just want to give you a little bit of notice about what we'll be covering next week. Now, we'll mention this at the end of the show as well, but with the COVID-19 tracker app being released, it's a good time to discuss that particular app and how you can use it to the best effect. So next week, we're going to be looking at that app, the COVID-19 tracker app, and we're hoping to speak to someone from the HSE too to be able to just help us with that. So the reason why we're giving you kind of advance notice of that, if you have any questions about that app, if you've any concerns, any things that you're wondering about, even the accessibility of it, those sort of things, you can send them in advance to the usual email address, labs@ncbi.ie, and you'll be able to put those to us. We'll try and cover those in the show next week as well. And of course, another thing that we want to mention is that while we've been covering our live events weekly up to this point, we're going to continue doing that up until the end of July. But with things starting to get back to something approaching normality, at least over recent weeks, and hopefully over the coming weeks as well, it's going to mean a little bit of a change to our live events. So from the start of August, we're going to be running our live events a little bit less frequently. We'll be going live once a month from the start of August. So from the start of August, it'll be once a month for our live events. We'll give you further details about that. And of course, we'll keep you informed as to when we're running those live events. One way that you can keep informed of any of these things, of what's coming up in any of the future live events or the regularity of them, any of those sort of things, is actually by means of our newsletter. So we have a newsletter which you can sign up to at www.ncbi.ie, and you can go to the technology section there, just follow the links through, and you'll be able to sign up to our newsletter online, or you can just send an email again through to labs@ncbi.ie, and that'll just keep you informed. You'll get a newsletter every week keeping you informed of what's coming up in future live events, but also covering plenty of related articles as well that are really helpful too. So if you'd like to be kept up to date with that, please do sign up for our newsletter as well. But just getting back to today's show, what are we looking forward to today? Well, following on from last week's show to a degree, we spoke about accessibility in the workplace, and the applications that we're looking at today are ones that can actually be very helpful in the workplace setting. A few weeks ago, we mentioned the inbuilt accessibility features in Windows, things like narrator and magnifier and changing the mouse pointer, all those sort of features to make Windows more accessible. Well, this week, we're going to look at a couple of purpose-built packages that do that. We're going to talk about SuperNova, and we're going to talk about Zoomtext. Now, they're sort of similar applications. They do some similar functions. There are some differences in it as well, but we'll try and look at both of those. And we're going to do that by means of a video in terms of SuperNova. Quinlivan, an NCBI Labs trainer, has helpfully prepared a couple of videos on SuperNova for us to get a bit of an overview of that. And then we're going to have a chat with Hilary Devlin, who's working with NCBI as well. We're delighted to welcome her to the show today, and she's going to be joining the usual panel this week of Sean, Daniel, JP and myself. Will be discussing those particular packages. Then a little bit later on, we have the long-awaited interview with Stuart Lawler. We have it at last, and you're really going to enjoy this one. Stuart is a really interesting guy to chat with, so stick around for that a little bit later on in the show. Of course, as usual, if you have any questions or comments about any of the things that we're discussing today, please do send us those questions, those comments. You can use the question panel on the right-hand side if you're tuning into Teams there, and you can email labs@ncbi.ie, and we'll try and get to those questions today if we can, and if not, we'll do so in a future live event. And of course, if you'd like to support our live events or other NCBI services as well, you can go to donate.ncbi.ie, donate.ncbi.ie, and don't underestimate the good that can do to keep our services going. So you can sponsor one of our live events as well if you like. You can email labs@ncbi.ie if you'd like to do that. For now, though, let's go straight into our first topic for today. We're going to talk about two packages. Both have some similar functions, but we'll try and give a bit of a flavour of both. And first of all, we're going to have a look at a video from Colette Quinlivan. Now, it's important to mention here that this package has a couple of elements to it. And to properly demonstrate this, we need to look at the elements one by one. So the first element is in relation to enhancing the visual display. If that doesn't suit you, if that's a problem for you, to just the visual without the audio, stick around for the second video a few moments afterwards, where we'll demonstrate the audio element of the package first. But let's look at our first video here of the visual features of SuperNova.
Hello and welcome. My name is Colette Quinlivan, and today I'm going to demonstrate Dolphin SuperNova software. Dolphin SuperNova is a magnification and screen reading software for Windows. It is available in 3 different editions to suit your level of vision. If SuperNova doesn't launch automatically when you start your computer, you can use left control, Shift and S to start it once it's installed on the computer. When it loads, it displays the SuperNova control panel, which contains all of the settings for SuperNova. On the control panel, we have at the very top is the title bar, and then below that is the menu bar, which provides access to all of the settings available via drop-down menus.
File menu. New no selection menu.
So we have speech turned on here at the moment, so it's reading out the headings on the menu bar. And the headings are File, Visual, Speech, Braille, Media, General, and Help.
Visual no selection menu.
For the moment,
no selection menu.
For the moment, I'm just going to turn off speech because we're
Voice unchecked shortcut 01 of 10.
Because we're going to concentrate on the visual aspects of the features of SuperNova for the moment. The button bar is positioned below the menu bar and contains large, easy-to-see buttons which provide access to SuperNova's most commonly used settings. Depending on which edition of SuperNova you're using, there are a number of different tabs on the button bar. And on this one, we have Visual, Speech, Braille, and Media. This is the magnifier and screen reader option. And to see what's within each tab, you just click on the headings with the mouse, or once the focus is on the button bar, you can use Control and Tab to scroll through the different options. To hide the control panel, you press Escape, and to bring it back up into view again, you press left control and space. You can access SuperNova's functions by clicking on the control panel with the mouse, as we have been doing, or you can also use SuperNova's keyboard controls. And these are extremely useful if you have low vision, as it allows for speedier access to different functions. Information on keyboard commands are available when you download SuperNova by accessing the Help menu on the button bar in the control panel. So I'll just show you here. I'm clicked on the Help button, and now I'm just going to choose magnifier, and this brings up different options. So I'm just going to go into where it says change magnification size, and this gives me information about changing the magnification size, including the hotkeys for increasing and decreasing magnification. There are also short useful tutorial videos available under Help in the menu bar. So now we're going to look at features contained in the Visual tab on the button bar. On the Visual tab, you can choose to turn on and off the magnification by clicking the icon which is a blue square with a magnifying glass on it. And click it again, it toggles it back on. You can also use the keyboard command left control and enter to toggle on and off the magnification. Magnification levels range from 1.2 times to 64 times. And again, you can change the magnification level by pressing left control and plus to increase the magnification, and left control and minus to decrease the magnification. There are also two buttons, a plus button beside where it says the size of the magnification, that the plus button increases the magnification and the minus button decreases the level of magnification. You can choose different ways to view the screen. For example, at the moment, we're looking at the screen in full screen mode. You can change this using the magnifier view button. You can change this to fixed window, a movable magnifying glass, or split screen. And the keyboard command for this is left control and numpad 7. And with the split screen, you can have half the screen magnified to the level that you want, and the other half is at the standard size of the screen. And this is useful if you want to if you're working on a document and you need magnification, you can set it to your magnification level. But you can also, somebody who is not using magnification can look at it on the standard size print. At the moment, the magnification is on the left-hand side of the screen, but you can change that to be at the top, at the right, or at the bottom. And now we're back at full screen mode again. When you increase the magnification, you can see there that you can fit less on the screen. So to see what else is on the screen, you need to move. You can move your mouse to pan around the screen. Similarly, there is a keyboard command for panning, which is right control and your arrow keys. So you can pan to the right, up, down, or left. And you can change the speed at which you go. And when you want to stop panning, you release the buttons. In the middle of the control panel, you have access to different options to make the screen easier to see. For example, you can change the mouse pointer. At the moment, I have a red mouse pointer. So if I click on the mouse pointer icon, it brings up a dialog box, and I can choose a different mouse pointer scheme. So I'm going with large yellow here. I click on apply, and that changes my mouse to yellow. In this area of the control panel, there's also the option to turn on highlighting, which means that SuperNova will track the focus of the computer for you. And you can choose the color of the highlight yourself to make it stand out more for you. So again, you can see here there's different large red, large blue, large yellow. There's various options there. The color scheme option gives you access to 24 different color schemes, which can help to reduce glare and increase your comfort while reading. So if we click on this, it turns on the color scheme, and this is a red and black option that was the last color scheme used. I can click on the enhancement option here, and there are other options such as invert brightness, which when I click on it, it now changes the colors on the screen. For the background of the control panel is black, the writing is white, and the screen behind is blue. Other options are negative, grayscale, high contrast white and black, high contrast black and white, and then there's a number of other schemes, different tints and different color combinations. You also have the option to configure your own custom scheme. To turn on the color scheme or turn it off, you use left control and numpad 0, or you click on it with the mouse. The two final features that I'm going to look at here in the visual tab are line view and Docreader. Line view is the option to have the content of the screen shown as a single line scrolling across the screen. So I'm just going to open a document here, and I'm just going to make sure that the focus of the computer is on the document. Right. Okay, sorry, I pressed Control and Home there to go to the top of the document. So line view, to start line view, you press left control and numpad period. And to start scrolling, you press spacebar, and the text begins to scroll from right to left. You can increase and decrease the speed by using the up and down arrows, and you can press escape to exit line view. So some people find that just simplifies reading, and it just makes it a bit easier for them to read. Docreader is another facility that lets you create your own reading environment, and this helps to make reading more comfortable for you. It can be useful if you experience issues from glare or fatigue. With Docreader, you can display text from documents, web pages, and any other sources showing text on the screen and have it read to you. So to launch Docreader, you press caps lock and numpad plus. Now I have set my colors here, I've got a green background with yellow print, and I also have a highlight option, which I'm going to click on play on the Docreader, and you'll see the highlighting there.
Hobs and microwaves introduction. Choosing the right cooking appliance for your needs can be fraught with difficulty for anyone, and especially so if you are blind or partially sighted.
So the highlighting is pink with blue writing. And those color combinations can be changed to suit your own particular needs. To exit Docreader, you press Escape, and you're back to your standard document. So these are the main features on the Visual tab of the SuperNova control panel. The next part is to look at the Speech tab.
Very good. So thanks very much to Colette for putting together that video for us. Maybe as you were listening to that description of some of the features there, some of the features possibly sounded a little bit familiar from the inbuilt features in Windows, but actually, as we saw in the video there's an awful lot more to it as well in SuperNova, and the same would go for Zoomtext as well. There's a lot more to these custom-made packages specifically for this purpose. So that was the visual element. As we said earlier, don't worry that if that was maybe not what you would use, if you would need the audio element, because Colette has also prepared a video for that purpose, just going through some of the audio elements of SuperNova as well. So we're going to have a look at Colette's second video now and look at the audio tab on SuperNova.
And welcome. This video demonstrates functions contained in the speech and other tabs of the SuperNova control panel. And the speech tab is located on the button bar. And it gives you options to turn on and off speech, either by clicking on the icon in the control panel or by pressing left control and 0.
Speech checked.
You can increase and decrease the volume, again by clicking on the mouse with the mouse on the plus and minus buttons.
Volume 91, 92.
Or you can press left control and equals
94
to increase 96, the volume,
98,
and left control and minus
96,
make it softer.
94.
To change the reading speed, you press left control, left shift and equals.
Speed 12, speed 13, speed 14, speed 15.
Make it faster.
Speed 16.
And then left control, left shift and minus to make it slower.
Speed 15, speed 14, speed 13, speed 12, speed 11.
Within the control panel, you have the option to adjust the verbosity level. And this means you can control how much detail you want to hear and the way you want to hear it. So, for example, users that are getting started can choose a high verbosity level, and SuperNova will prompt them which keys to press. So we'll have a look at how this works in practice. So I'm just going to open up a document here.
Menu, left mouse button, choosing kitchen appliances compatibility mode word. Anyone and especially so if you are blind or partially, space. Start of document.
So I have a document up here in front of me and I'm going to get SuperNova to read it for me. So I press numpad plus.
Choosing cookers, ovens, hobs, and microwaves introduction. Choosing the right cooking appliance for your needs can be fraught with difficulty for anyone and especially so if you are blind or.
So as you can see there, numpad plus starts SuperNova reading, and I pressed space to stop it. As it was reading, because I had the highlight option from the visual tab, I had that turned on. You can see that the highlight is tracking along where SuperNova is reading.
Blank line.
I can read line by
The range
line.
and scope of appliances on sale is diverse and often confusing.
Just by pressing my down arrow.
Things, you will need to decide what type of fuel to use, gas or electric, whether you want a.
Or I can go back
The range and
by
scope of
pressing up
appliances
arrow.
on sale is diverse and often confusing, among many other. The range and scope of appliances on sale is diverse and often confusing, among many other things.
And to continue to get it to read through the whole document, you press numpad plus. I'm just going to open up
Menu.
a blank document here.
One word.
And,
Blank line.
and here you will see, I'm just going to type in a very short sentence so that you can see how SuperNova reads as I type. So
H-E-L-L-O, capital. Hello space. H-O, capital, R-E, R space, what, you question.
So you can see here, because the verbosity level is set quite high, SuperNova reads the characters and the words, and also the punctuation. And as mentioned already, you can change that to suit your own particular needs.
Save your changes to this file. File name. Hello, save it. Choose a look more save button. Cancel button. Don't save button. Pressed. Choosing kitchen appliances compatibility mode word. Things, comma, you will need.
So that's how SuperNova reads documents and reads as you type.
SuperNova control panel. Speech page. Voice languages group. Volume.
So on our SuperNova control panel, this on this particular one, we also have Braille and media options. And depending on the edition that you have, there are options for the use of Braille and the Braille display.
Braille page.
And these
Braille
are
display group. Braille output checkbox.
also through the media tab. You have options to scan and read printed documents
and downloads group.
And to access
Scan
entertainment. For more information, you can download a demo version of Dolphin SuperNova to try out, or you can contact your local technology trainer with NCBI Labs through NCBI's helpline 1850 33 43 53. To quit SuperNova, press left control and spacebar to bring up the control panel, but as it's up here in front of me already, just make
mouse
sure
button.
I can press Alt and F4.
Quit SuperNova. If you quit SuperNova, your speech and magnification will stop. Are you sure you want to quit? Yes button. Shortcut what?
So a dialog box comes up asking me, am I sure I want to quit? The yes button is highlighted, so I can click on that or press space.
Press.
To say yes. And this will close SuperNova. Thank you for listening.
Very good. So thanks very much to Colette for taking us through both the visual tab and the audio tab there as well for SuperNova. Now, as we mentioned earlier, there's another package as well called Zoomtext that has some similar functions. And we're going to maybe discuss that a little bit more in this next section. And we're delighted to have Hilary Devlin with us. Hilary works with NCBI as well. And Hilary uses technology in her day-to-day life working with NCBI. You're very welcome to the show, Hilary.
Thanks a million for having me, Jude. Thanks a million.
So, Hilary, do you mind just giving us a bit of an idea? What software would you use on your computer at the moment?
Okay. Well, just to give you, I suppose, a bit of background, I'm an ECLO within NCBI, so I'm an eye care liaison officer. And I use the computer an awful lot in what I'm doing. So I use a magnification package called Zoomtext, and as you said, it's quite similar to SuperNova. I would have used SuperNova in the past, but just the way circumstances went, I started to use Zoomtext more. I use it obviously in work and also in my personal life. And it's I basically use it for everything that I do online. Full stop. Yeah. I couldn't be able to not use it. Wouldn't be able to use my computer without it now.
Yeah. Okay, so it gets quite a workout.
It certainly does. And I was a little bit resistant to magnification at the beginning, probably a little bit of ignorance as well. I didn't use any magnification in college, which looking back now was a bit short-sighted of me, excuse the pun. But I didn't want to be seen as different to anybody else. I didn't really ask for any help and didn't know that kind of magnification package existed. So struggled through college with neck pain and eye pain and having to handwrite essays rather than type them because it was just too much like, hard work. And then when I got my job at NCBI 20 years ago, I was asked by Colin Kenny, like, what kind of package do you use on your computer? And I was like, Windows. I didn't actually know that there was a specialist package that could do what Zoomtext does, and to be honest, I've never looked back.
So it really was kind of life-changing for you to have that.
Oh, completely. I mean, I suppose coming to work in NCBI, the jobs I'd had previously, I'd been out and about. I'd worked in Barstown. I was looking after kids, so I didn't really use any kind of, I used basic emails and stuff, but I never had to be online and use the programs that we use in NCBI. So I don't know how long I would have managed if I hadn't taken it on board. I think I would have ended up in very, very worn out and very stressed. So it took me a bit of time to get my head around it because of the, not being able to see the whole screen. But with magnification, but let's be honest, I wasn't really seeing the whole screen anyway before I used it. So yeah.
So just a case of kind of adapting to a new way of using it, but it brought the benefits.
Absolutely. I think some people might be a little bit reluctant from that perspective because you think it's going to slow you down, because if I have it up at by 5 or by 6, I'm only seeing that amount on the screen, but it's phenomenal how quickly you can adapt to it and bring the magnification up or down very easily and navigate. And I think your memory of a website or your memory of something like where things are laid out just works in a different way, so you can find things much quicker. So it's just took a little bit of time, but once you got over that, it's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, very good. You mentioned that you used SuperNova before and you're using Zoomtext now, so you've got kind of you're in a good position to maybe compare the two side by side to a degree. We won't get into really technical sort of all of the differences between them, but just from your experience, what would you say the differences are, and why would you choose to use Zoomtext yourself at the moment?
Well, I think obviously SuperNova, for me, I think it was, now I know there's a speech obviously with Zoomtext as well, but I feel Zoomtext is just, it's just clearer to use for me, and the controls are clearer. I felt that sometimes now, again, I was using SuperNova a couple of years ago. There was a couple of things that it didn't like. It didn't work so well with. Now those things could have been straightened out at this point, but I don't know, I like the actual control panel of Zoomtext. The contrast, I think it's stronger than SuperNova, and it's less busy, and I just I honestly just prefer it. I don't know. It's like anything. Like, why would you prefer one thing over the other?
Yes, yeah.
I don't use the speech, so I can't compare that.
Yeah.
But visually, I just prefer it. I'm sorry, I know that's not a
Yeah.
great explanation, but and also it's like, I don't know about SuperNova, Jude, I don't know, but having the ability at one stage, because I was working in a couple of different offices, I'm sure you can do it with SuperNova too, but I had the USB. That's when I transferred over to Zoomtext, and I was working in Dublin and Dundalk and at home, and it was just brilliant to be able to move it from one computer to the other.
Absolutely. And to be fair, I think that actually the way you've expressed that is exactly what people kind of need to hear, because it kind of is just down to preference sometimes, isn't it? If you've got two packages that do very similar things and they both do them quite well, the preference does come into it and does play a big part. Yeah. Yeah. Do you use some of the speech features in Zoomtext, or do you just use the magnification?
I just use the magnification. Now, it's not that I haven't tried. I just think I was a bit of a reluctant user at the beginning, so I really just took the magnification on board. I don't think I'm an oral learner. Or an oral. I don't think I learn so well that way, or listen. I found I did try it every so often, but I kept drifting off, and I just couldn't concentrate. I had to see it. So for some people, they need it, and that's absolutely there's obviously for them, they need it. But for me, I would probably have it magnified. Even if I had to have it up till 10, I would prefer to physically see the words than hear them. So I suppose that's why I haven't, but I would listen to audiobooks. Like, I would listen to audio, but when it comes to my work, I think thankfully I have enough vision to do that, and I think I would choose the visually to see it magnified over hearing it, and that's just, I have that option, so I'm lucky to have that.
Again, it's kind of interesting just hearing the preference side of it. Would you say, from your experience of using the program, would there be people who might choose the other way around, that actually they might use it just that little bit easier with the audio, even though they might be able to bump it up, as you were saying, you might bump it up to 10. Somebody else might decide, actually, I don't want it that big. I want to be able to listen instead.
I have to say, Jude, like, if I was a parent of a child who had vision like mine, I would be encouraging them to use the speech and the audio. I would, because I think it's just something that I've just got a bit stubborn about, and I am probably missing out. I do get tired, and I know there's documents like that I could just sit and listen to, but I'm a bit sticky. And I mean, maybe it's something I should be looking at, actually having this conversation. And listen, you can teach a dog new tricks and stuff, but if I was a parent, I would be suggesting, because so much now is online. Do you know what I mean? So much is online. So, yes, and the other way around, I would say you could use both. Again, it's preference, but I think if I was 15, I would love to have done both, to be honest. You know, I would I'm a bit stubborn, let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, I don't know you well enough to be able to say whether that's true or not, Hilary.
I am a bit, though.
I won't invite the panel on to discuss that now at this point. Let's discuss whether that's the case. Tell me something, Hilary. When you're using Zoomtext, do you always use the mouse to control it? Do you use hotkeys? How do you control the settings on it?
Again, I just whipped in and started using it as quickly as possible. So apart from, switching on and off and increasing and decreasing the magnification and escaping, I use the mouse. I was a Mac user originally, like way back, when Apple Macs came out, and like we had my dad worked with Apple, and we had one of the first Macs, and I just always had a mouse, and I think it's just me. I think now SuperNova has it too, obviously, but one of my biggest problems was losing the mouse pointer and not being able to navigate. So my pointer is massive, like it's huge, big green arrow, and I just whip around with the mouse. Now, some people find, like, if I have colleagues behind me, or even my husband, go, Hilary, that's just making me dizzy looking at that, and I'm like, well, don't look at it. But it works for me. Would it probably be faster using the hotkey? Probably, but generally, I don't think it holds me back too much. And I think one of we talked about having the split screen. That's a way I suppose you could manage, with both, with controls. But I I'm a mouse. I'm all about the mice.
Yeah. And tell me something again, just kind of the settings and controls of Zoomtext. If you've sort of made changes to how it displays and things like that, and then you turn off your computer, does it hold those settings, or
it does? Yeah, you can set it to default. So like it's like, so say you have it, you're working away and you go, okay, lovely, this is the right magnification for me for generally. Now I would increase and decrease the magnification depending what I'm doing. Like I would have the magnification at its highest if I'm in a Word document or sending an email, because I don't have to worry about seeing, I know my way around a Word document without actually being able to, having to see the taskbars or whatever. But if I generally have it set at 5, magnification 5, you can go in and set it as default. And once you set it, you just turn your computer on and then it just starts immediately. And if you have a super duper laptop like I have, thanks to all the lads in labs, it starts so quickly that you just turn the computer on and it opens up straight away and away you go. And it's brilliant. Yeah, you don't have to worry about setting it each time.
You were saying you kind of have particular settings for email, for example, if you know the layout of the screen. Yeah. Is there a way to get it to kind of save those settings, or how do you work that? Do you have to go into, when you go into your email, you might change the settings again, when you go out of it you change it again? Is that what happens?
I just do, like I have it on caps, arrow up and down, so I literally will just go, it's so quickly, it's the same as moving a mouse, you just go up down, like when you were chatting and Colette had her presentation, I was just going up and down to see what she's doing. I don't even think about it now. In the office though, we have our large monitors. Again, it's fabulous, really, really good. We have the 2 monitors, which is like, it took me a while to get my head around that. Sean was incredibly patient with me on that one. But what I generally do is I would have, say, if I'm on a website that I don't know, I'll have that, say, up on one screen so I can just navigate around it. Whereas I'll have on the other screen, you can change the magnifications on both screens. So it's just brilliant. Like, you can have you control the magnification. So my email might be up to 6 or 7, whereas my other screen, where has the web page I'm going to, might just be at 1.5 or 1.2 because 1.5 or 2, because I just need to see, because I'm not familiar with the website I'm at. That is unreal. Like, that is brilliant. It's really good.
And I think one of the big things that you mentioned earlier already, actually, just in terms of the usability of a program like this, is to be able to not just have it only installed on one PC. Having the ability to use it on different PCs, maybe with your USB key, that's quite a big thing.
It's really important. And I mean, I think that we're not, especially with what we've been gone through the last number of months. Because I work in a hospital, I work at home, I work in head office. Now I have everything I need on my laptop, but before that, being able just to stick, put the USB in and away you go, it's massive freedom. So like, if you're working for a company or you were in college and you had to work in different campuses and you had to go to one campus and use their computer system there and use another campus, it just gives you that freedom, and you don't have to worry. It's the worry all the time, especially like, you don't want to be behind anybody else. You just want to be the same as everybody else. Like, there are things that take longer. Look, let's be honest, there are. But this, having a package like Zoomtext, it just means that you can get your work done the same as everybody else, and participate in meetings. And like something like Teams, once I'd learned the layout of Teams, once I knew where everything was, there's no reason I wasn't able to do the same as everybody else. Do you know what I mean? So yeah,
very good. Well, it's been great to chat to you, Hilary.
Thanks very much, Jude.
Thanks for joining us on the program as well.
No problem.
So if anybody wants to try out Zoomtext or SuperNova, you should be able to get a trial version that will work in 40-minute mode for Zoomtext. Particularly, you can get that 40-minute mode for Zoomtext. If you want to get the SuperNova Magnifier screen reader, you can download a free 30-day trial before purchasing it as well. So if you want to try out those pieces of software, please do. So that was really instructive. Thanks very much again to Hilary for your comments there, and to Colette as well for putting together those really helpful videos on SuperNova. Now, just before we move on to the next section of our show, just a reminder again about our show next week. We'll be talking about the new COVID-19 tracker app. So please do get your questions or your comments into us. It's obviously quite an important thing at the moment. It's something that's going to be maybe causing a little bit of anxiety and stress for people, particularly if you're wanting to get a hold of that app and you're worried about the accessibility of it or anything like that. Please do just send us through your concerns, your questions. We'll try and make sure that they're answered in the show next week. Now, moving on. Just a few weeks ago, you might remember that we were trying to talk to Stuart Lawler on our show. We had a few issues, unfortunately, getting to be able to talk to Stuart for the Seeing It Your Way piece. But you'll be glad to know that we actually managed to catch up with Stuart again. Thanks to Stuart for making the time to record an interview yesterday. And we're going to hear that interview now in this week's Seeing It Your Way. So I'm delighted to welcome Stuart Lawler to the show. Now, many of you who are listening will know Stuart from maybe many years of working with Stuart and working with NCBI as well. Stuart, for those who don't know you already, can you give us a little bit of your background and maybe a little bit of background on your sight loss as well?
Yeah, sure thing, Jude. It's great to be here, by the way. Lovely to be at an NCBI live session. So many thanks for the invitation. So yeah, as you said, I'm Stuart Lawler. I'm totally blind. I'm one of the, I don't know what the percentage is, the very low levels anyway, 2 or 3% I think of people who identify as blind have total sight loss, and that means no light perception. That means nothing. So my eye condition is something called retinal blastoma, which was or is tumours on the optic nerve. I was brought into the eye and ear hospital when I was 6 weeks old, and it's kind of funny when you hear about it now. It was like the mid 70s, and it was only discovered because somebody, a family relation, apparently lots of people were having conversations saying, gosh, Stuart isn't responding to any lights. Did you notice that? But nobody would say it to my parents because they felt, well, how do you broach that subject, you know? Yeah. And I was the first child. I was the eldest. I am the eldest in my family. So eventually my dad's mother, who died a year after I was born, she decided that she would mention, she said it to my dad, you know, maybe Stuart, he doesn't seem to be focusing, maybe just bring him into the doctor just to be sure. And they brought me to the GP at home in Kildare, and he said, I think we should bring him to the specialist at the eye and ear, and they ran some tests, and so obviously the optic nerves had to be severed in order to stop the tumour growing. So as a result, I'm totally blind to some degree, I suppose, Jude. For me, that's been all I've known. So I have never known anything else, and that is my normal. You know, we're hearing this word "new normal" all the time at the moment. Yes, it kind of drives us mad. that for me, that is my normal, and I have been doing lots of different things with technology with the National Council for the Blind for many years, and then I moved on just 2 years ago.
Okay, so just come back to when you were very young, when you were first diagnosed. I'd imagine that must have been quite a stressful time for your family, for your parents at that point. Maybe you weren't so aware of it at that age, and maybe you were kind of protected from it a little bit. But as you got a bit older, did you become a bit more aware of that kind of stress?
I suppose my family were always very, look at, you need to be treated the same as anybody else. But I have no doubt, and in fact, I know for a fact after speaking, to my parents in the past, that when they were given a diagnosis that your son's going to be totally blind, they were mid-20s. I was their first child. and they didn't know. There was no, like, there's no internet. There's no, who do you talk to about this? What's out there? What does being blind mean?
Yes.
What are the prospects for the future? It's huge things and big words and no real support. So I think they, through lots of just chatting with other people, and someone talked to someone else, and eventually they found, oh, there's a guy in Dublin who happens to be blind. He's a bit older than Stuart, and his parents are also struggling and looking for someone. And then a few other people got together, and I think over time they just built those connections, but it took a lot longer than it might take now. And yeah, I think over time, maybe I, as a kid growing up, didn't really appreciate the significant stress that I'm sure that caused everybody around me. And were it not for their kind of tenacity, I suppose, and their willingness, not to give up, then we probably wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation today.
Yeah, it's interesting just to hear that perspective as well, because that's probably, again, something that a lot of families will identify with. Interesting just to hear as well, those qualities of tenacity and things like that does have actually a real impact on somebody's life. If that actually is the way that somebody's approaching it and getting on with it, it can actually make a massive impact on somebody's, and the success of how somebody adapts to that kind of normal, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And in some ways, your family experiences and how you're treated and how you are supported and allowed to grow really shapes the person you become. Yes.
Yeah. What sort of technology would have been available at that time to help you in your schoolwork, for example?
Yeah, so I mean, the first piece of technology, and I'm using technology very broadly here, Jude, but I think it is.
Yeah.
The first piece of technology I ever used was the Perkins Brailler, and I love and there's people nowadays. My Perkins Brailler sits under my desk here at home, and is used probably 3 times a year to write a birthday card or a Christmas card for someone, or write a Braille label. And I read numerous appeals from people saying we desperately need Braille. If you have a spare Perkins Braille or an old Perkins Braille that you're not using, we need us to send it to Africa or somewhere else to help, blind children. And do you think I'll part with my Perkins Braille that I use 3 times a year? So it's a great piece of technology, and that was the first thing I used. And then there was a device I remember we got in the early 80s in school in Dublin. There was a company called Telesensory in the States, and they made a device called the VersaBraille. And I don't know if any of your listeners would remember the VersaBraille. 20-cell Braille display, and it used cassette tapes to store files. And we thought this thing was, hey guys, we've reached, this is it. It doesn't get any better than this. We're here. VersaBraille was incredible, and thousands of pounds at the time. And if you were allowed to touch it for a few minutes and type on it, and oh my god, and it stores this stuff on a tape. And I remember, instead of files, you had chapters. So you would create a chapter, and a chapter could only have 1,000 pages. So if you went over 1,000 pages, it had to become a new chapter or a new file. And you could store 10 chapters on a tape, 5 on side 1, 5 on side 2. And they pretty much told us this is as good as it's going to get.
Yeah.
And then sure, floppy disks arrived with the VersaBraille. The next VersaBraille had a floppy disk drive, and sure, this was fantastic altogether. So it's amazing how we think we have reached the pinnacle, and then technology. And I guess as kids, we didn't realize that this was just the start. And the other one, Jude, I have to mention to you, is I remember seeing in, I think it was the ILAC library, mid-1980s, we were told there's a great new device in the ILAC Centre Library. We're all brought in to see it. All these excited blind kids going in to see the Kurzweil reading machine. This thing was the size of a washing machine, and people would play, and you'd put a page of print on this thing, and 45 seconds later it reads it. My God, this is incredible. 45,000 Irish pounds at the time. And here we are now with this stuff on Seeing AI in our pocket, on our iPhone. It's madness how, and you wonder, what will we talk about in 10 years' time when we're maybe looking back at an interview like this and saying, my God. So technology has been incredible how it has sort of crept into our lives in so many ways. And those early devices, like I remember using the BBC computers, the old, then there was the old DOS computer with HAL from Dolphin, and using WordPerfect 5.1. And that got me through college with floppy disks. My first laptop had a 40 megabyte hard drive, WordPerfect 5.1, and an external speech synthesizer. And I'd carry a big bag with all the cables around and connect them all up at the start of each lecture.
You know, you're not only describing the progress of accessible technology and technology in general, you're giving away your age as well, Stuart.
Well, yeah. They could track mid-70s. It's but there was so much stuff, and I think at the time this technology was obviously very expensive and very hard to get your hands on. But I think even then we realized this is a game changer in terms of access to information, in terms of being able to do stuff on an equal level, especially when you're in kind of mainstream education like third level.
Yes, yeah. And just kind of from what you were saying there, it's incredible just thinking about how technology has changed, but also even how some of those things that you mentioned, the concept behind it, or the kind of technology, the basic technology behind it, or the basic premise, has actually been, you know, the longevity of that has been incredible, really. A lot of them have actually continued to be used, they did continue to be used for many years, and even the concepts are sort of still around, really.
Yeah, and there's some great, it's a great point, and there's some great examples of that in some of the Braille technology we use today. So the old Braille and Speak machines, which I'm sure some of your listeners listening in, Braille Speak, Braille-like machines, people have very fond memories of. Blasey note takers, so Dean Blasey, who founded Blasey Engineering in the mid-80s. Blasey Engineering came out with the Braille Light and Braille and Speak devices. The commands they built into those we're still using today on our note-taking devices, things like your Apple iOS, your Braille, whatever it is, Braille Sense, Braille Note, Braille, whatever they are. Those concepts still exist, and those, fundamental tools that you would have used back in the 80s are still relevant today.
Yeah. Do you mind me asking, Stuart, 'cause a lot of people who, when they're thinking about the idea of accessible technology, they might be listening to a live event like this and could be sort of thinking, well, I'm not into technology, or you have to have an aptitude for it. Was that something you ever had a particular interest in anyway? Was it something that you this was just the way you did things, and so you kind of got used to it?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'll say two things about it, and I will answer your question in a second. But what I will say is, and I say to people frequently, you don't have to be into technology. You don't have to be a tech geek to use all this stuff, but you do have to, fortunately or unfortunately, I guess, you do have to be able to get it to a point where it will work for you. And I think more so for people who have a disability, more so for people with sight loss. Bottom line is, technology is so involved in our life. If you think, Jude, of the times you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? Look at your phone, or maybe you turn off your phone is waking you up. I'll switch off the alarm, grab your phone. I normally look at the weather then, and I flick through the news before I get out of bed. I'm doing this with my phone, and then I'm doing something, there's bits of technology all the time. Yeah, that's the first thing. It's
actually a good point. Just even as you mentioned that, it's probably useful for us to hear that kind of run through a day almost of how you use technology. So as you were saying there, you kind of wake up in the morning, straight away you're checking things on your phone that'll be useful.
Yeah, my phone wakes me up. My Alexa device is there as well. I probably ask Alexa something, or maybe she wakes up. We use things like Seeing AI all the time, and especially now because we have a child, we have a 14-month-old, so we're using Seeing AI to read labels, to check things for him. I'm using, for example, if I go out walking and I want to check my step count, doing that on my phone. There's no doubt that the iPhone and I say iPhone not just because it's the thing I'm using it, but it's because they really were the first to make this accessible touchscreen smartphone available. There's no doubt that the iPhone has been one of the biggest game changers for people with sight loss. Although prior to that, the Nokia handsets with the old program called Talks, that some people remember, the screen readers, and we brought this technology into NCBI in 2003, and that was hugely exciting that suddenly, you know, relatively cheaply, handsets could get into people's hands. But I suppose other things I'm thinking of during the day, like outside of the work stuff, which is all technology related. Online shopping, getting your groceries, checking what are the best before dates, using your phone to do that kind of stuff. There are so many things that we are using, that we're engaging with technology on.
And to be honest, I think that that's kind of a key part of being able to sort of level the playing field, as you kind of mentioned earlier, because this is what everybody is doing now. This is just part of life, isn't it? Technology is just part of everybody's life from morning, noon, and night, really.
It is, and I suppose sometimes we as people with sight loss, whether we're blind or have low vision, have to engage with it in a slightly different way, and it won't always be painless, by the way. You know, that app that maybe all your friends have talked about, oh, it's a great thing, you download it and you can't use it. And by the way, 99% of the time, it's not you, it's the app. It's the technology, and maybe you need a little bit of help, and you contact NCBI or whoever. But it's understanding that you got to make technology work for you, and leverage that, because life is hard enough, you know, and there's enough other challenges. So use the technology in whatever way you can.
It's worth reiterating what you were just saying there, that 99% of the time it's not you, it's the app.
Absolutely. And I go back to, I'm actually remembering in NCBI in my days of when I was a technology trainer, and major online retailer who had a shopping service, and we were showing somebody how to use the website, and she was very happy and used it week on week to do her shopping. But one day the website got upgraded. It got a major upgrade, and let's just say that accessibility got sort of left behind for a little while. But this seriously threw this person and lots of other people, because suddenly they can't get these items that they were looking for. And it has huge knock-on implications. So, technology does fail. And some of the times I used to spend a lot of time talking to people about what happens when it fails. You know, what are your strategies for getting around that, you know? Yeah,
it's a good question.
Because it will fail.
Okay. Yeah. And it's a good question for people to kind of even think about themselves. It's quite a useful one. Just on the subject, as you mentioned there, kind of that's maybe been an area where there's been a bit of an obstacle of getting the full value out of technology, that the effect, the impact that you could get out of it sometimes wasn't always possible, or maybe everything wasn't updated at the right time, you couldn't get the full value out. Has there been other things through your experience, any other obstacles that you would say that maybe prevented you from getting the most out of what was available at the time?
Oh, you know, in the early days, obviously, like when we didn't have screen readers at the level we do now, there is so much great stuff out there. You know, there's free or paid for screen readers as you wish. You know, people can use whatever they want to do whatever job they need to do. Back in the day, I remember when we were at home, when I was 11 or 12, we got our first computer was an old Amstrad, very run-of-the-mill home computer, late 1980s, and my sisters, my twin sisters, were 9, and they became human screen readers. Because I used to use the word processor to do my homework. I realized really interested in how we can make this technology work.
Yes,
but they didn't have a screen reader, but they became human screen readers, and they still kind of talk, and they got very good at knowing that they didn't need to read the whole screen. They knew the bits that I needed to hear. And they got really good at knowing how to sort of summarize the information. And I think that was a really interesting experience for them as well.
Yeah.
And I used to always say, I remember getting I think it was a musical keyboard at the time, because when there's nobody around and when everybody is far away, I try to play music. But I used to, I remember getting a keyboard at one point, and it had all sorts of great features, and there was a huge book that came with it. I remember thinking, oh my God, I wish I could read this thing. And you'd be asking a family member, can you look up, it's such and such a section, they're flicking through it, and it's taken them ages, and you're putting somebody out, and they're not really into doing it, they'll do it, but it's like, oh, it would be so much easier if I could do this myself. Now we just Google the manual. Get it within a couple of seconds, or there's a million different forums where all these people are asking the same questions. That's thanks. So I think they were the big things that technology, and of course the other, I suppose, aspect was that I'm old enough to remember the move, and this is very significant, I think, to mention this, the move to Windows from a very much DOS command line interface, which was very fast, still is very fast, very fast way of getting information. Suddenly we're moving to Windows. I remember when Windows 95 came out, and Bill Gates there was a big promotion, and they had the Rolling Stones Start Me Up song, big TV advert, and hey guys, there's no accessibility in this. And so I remember being in college at the time, and people saying to me, there's people going to lose their jobs out of this because there's no accessibility, there's nothing built in. We didn't have, we kind of had JAWS, we had Window Eyes, we had something called Windows Bridge at the time. None of these guys were all caught unawares. Microsoft hadn't worked with them in advance, so they were frantically trying to catch up to build something for Windows 95, and they knew that this needed to be done very quickly. But now you look at today, and if you want to install Windows from scratch and you don't have a screen reader, Microsoft Narrator is built in right from the beginning. There's no doubt we've come so far on so many different levels. Yeah,
it's an interesting thing, just as you mentioned there, because progress isn't always progress for everyone at the same time, is it? It's kind of like progress for many people. Then for Windows 95 coming out, people might have been jumping up and down thinking how brilliant it was to have that, but sometimes you do have this sort of element of it doesn't always come along at the same time. So it's great to see that it does eventually get there, but it'd be nicer if it was kind of all at the same time sometimes.
Yeah, and I remember in particular with Windows 95, like asking people, what's it like? Because I had used a little bit of the predecessor, which was Windows 3.1, because there actually was a version of JAWS at the time supporting Windows 3.1 when I was in college. And I remember asking, what's Windows 95 like? And I remember talking to a friend of mine at the time, and he said, it's fine, it's kind of the same. And I think I'm thinking to myself, but if it's the same, why doesn't it work? It can't be the same. There must be something, it obviously looks a lot better, or there's something more fancy. And then, of course, when we did get the access, to a large extent, it probably wasn't a whole lot different. But it was that time between the product being released and before we had access, which was, by the way, about, if I'm not mistaken, almost a year. It's a long time to wait. And now by I guess by standards nowadays, it's a huge amount of time to wait.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of coming back to something you said a little bit earlier, and maybe sort of this has a technology side to it as well, but it's not just entirely about technology, I suppose, for this element. You mentioned there about that feeling of kind of not wanting to bother somebody else sometimes. I would imagine that a lot of the time, the way you kind of process something yourself, or where you're at the moment yourself, could that end up being a little bit of an obstacle to being able to get the most out of something as well at times? Not necessarily that other people have a reluctance, but maybe there's a feeling from time to time that other people might have a reluctance to help.
Yeah, possibly. And maybe then maybe it's your perception, maybe that reluctance. And by the way, I'm not sure that anybody who I ever asked for help was reluctant. Maybe I felt, and exactly as you say. And in fact, I used to batch my requests, you know. So listen, could you have a look at that chapter? And if you didn't mind, could you just also check page 26? Or I'd say, now I'll ask my dad this one, and then I'll wait a day and ask my sister, can she do this bit? But you know, perhaps that was partly me, and because I was also aware that some of the stuff I was asking was quite technical, and again, it goes back to this human screen reader. They were essentially reading to me, but I was processing the information, and to them, I don't think it was very interesting stuff, you know. So does it impede your own maybe thirst for knowledge, or how you find your information? I think it possibly, in my case, yes, it possibly did.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because one of the reasons why I ask that is just simply, even from the perspective of when we're talking about kind of learning new technologies and things like that, sometimes it does help to have somebody around, just even while you're getting to grips with a new technology. Everybody finds that a little bit as well, I think. And I think everybody would find that we can sometimes have a reluctance to kind of either try something new, or a reluctance to ask somebody to give us a bit of guidance. But then when accessibility is kind of dependent on that, sometimes at the start, that could be a serious kind of roadblock if we don't get over that sort of internal feeling.
Absolutely. And I don't know, Jude, if you've ever been in a situation, I know I certainly have, on you know, courses, or you're at a lecture, or you're somewhere, and someone says, "Does anybody have any questions?" And you're sitting there going, I don't want to ask. I have a clue what he meant by that. And then someone goes, "Can I just ask what you meant by?" And you go, "Oh, thank God someone else did that." So it's kind of, I think it's almost knowing that no question is stupid, no question. And we all started off at this point, and I still love, and I do a fair amount of this nowadays, just sitting with people, seeing how people learn, and supporting people to understand why technology can be a really powerful tool in their sight loss journey, because I suppose, you know, we're talking about sight loss here, in their daily life with sight loss. Why technology is such an ally, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting actually, just talking to you and getting those perspectives. I mean, if we were to kind of, not that you can particularly easily sum all of this up, there's so many kind of different aspects of technology that we haven't focused on, and the different ways that you might use it in your life. But if you were to describe the overall impact that technology has made on your life, how would you describe it? How would you kind of imagine, if none of this technology was a bit available, for example, what sort of a difference would happen?
That, you know, that's a really, and I think about it every so often, and as you've asked it just there, I still get almost scared thinking about it. We wouldn't be sitting here, obviously. We wouldn't have this technology, but I wouldn't be working. Maybe you wouldn't be working in this, this role. It's a very interesting question, because it's kind of like, what has this made you do? Well, for me, it's allowed me to work, but it's also allowed me to, for example, during COVID-19, I didn't see my parents in Kildare for 15 weeks, I think. We used to have these Zoom quizzes every week, family quizzes, which loads of people ended up doing. And I would switch on my video. I never switch on my camera, mostly during work meetings. And here's an interesting thing, by the way, another little sideline. Yeah. I never switch on my camera, Jude, when I'm at home. And I said this to my boss at the start of COVID. I said, because I don't know exactly what the camera can see. Yes. I don't particularly want him to see my clothes horse or toys on the floor or whatever. And he said, absolutely, no problem. But anyway, I switch on my camera when we have the Zoom quizzes so that everybody can see me and that I look okay. I'm still alive. So I think technology has that, even those kind of things, life stuff, allowing us to books. the amount of reading that I've been able to do, downloading books from Audible, from NCBI's Overdrive library, which is a wonderful resource, by the way. The Bookshare service that NCBI have, outstanding resource. Again, all thanks to technology, and it has just been there, an integral part of my life, and I know an integral part of the lives of so many people who are listening in today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say so many people would completely agree with the sentiments that you expressed there. Looking forward, where do you think we're going to be? Like you mentioned earlier, if we were to be looking back in 10 years' time at an interview like this, we could be in a very different place. What would you expect will be the kind of development of accessible technology? And as a kind of secondary question to that as well, what would you like to see?
Okay, well, let's go right out, and then we'll come back and be a bit more realistic. Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to drive down to Mayo and bring you out for lunch or something someday in my Google car or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go with that one.
Maybe we will get to do that. Who knows? So look, the idea of the driving car, the self-driving car. There's a company down in Tuam in County Galway who create a lot of the self-parking stuff for cars at the moment, and I visited them a couple of years ago, and they said back, and this was 2017, they said then that if you wanted to put driverless cars on the road today, you could. The challenge is driverless and driver cars together will have problems, because obviously, you know, computers and humans and how we react to things is going to be different. But where in the immediate or maybe midterm future, I think we need to there needs to be an advocacy, a piece of work done around white goods being made accessible. So I will struggle when we have to replace our hob, for example, because most hobs now are flat. You can't feel the rings.
Yes.
They're touchscreen. How do you set them? How do you know what temperature you're setting them to?
Yeah.
My TV doesn't talk to me, so I can't read the electronic program guides. I can get a lot of access through other means, but I can't do that. The washing machine that we have here has 3 programs that we use all the time. There's about 9 on it, I believe, but we don't know what the others are because we sort of worked out 3 things we needed. It would be great if those things could talk. So I think we've come so far with our mobile devices, with our PC-based, Mac-based, whatever it is you use. It's, I think, the domestic things, the smart home, interoperability, I suppose, with our existing technology, for that to work is for me an area of huge interest. And the other one, I think, is just in employment. We have to make sure that we can educate the mainstream recruiters, let's say, to let them know that technology is the greatest enabler for people with sight loss. And this kit, the right kit in our hands, because we all know the people who go for these jobs, the people with sight loss go for these jobs, they're smart people. That's why they're going for these jobs. They're able to do it. There's no question about that. But we have to make sure that technology allows these people to perform the very same as their sighted peers, if not better. And we have to make sure that we can respond proactively to issues around, for example, web-based applications in the workplace, or challenges around in-house applications that may not be accessible. And they're the things that I suppose we're dealing with all the time. And they're the things that are going to impact, I think, a lot in the future around how the world of work operates and how people with sight loss can make meaningful contributions to it. And I think, you know, the last thing is that we have to keep advocating. We have to keep ensuring that accessibility and usability, because they're 2 things that are combined and that work hand in hand, remain at the fore. And that if you find, and this is a really, I think, worth saying, Jude, if you download an app to your smartphone and you find it doesn't work, the best thing you can do is not, well, you can ring NCBI, of course, you can ring Jude or somebody else, But the more effective, even better thing you can do right away is write to the developer. Find out who the developer is and send a nice email and say, listen, I've just downloaded your app, or if it's a website, I've just visited your website and I'm using some assistive technology and these are the problems I'm having. If you're not sure what the problems are that you're having, then ring NCBI or ring someone else and ask them to check. Or anybody who knows me, by the way, I'll put it out here, ring me. I'm happy to. You know, this is a community thing. We all need to help. So we as visually impaired, as people with sight loss, can advocate collectively to ensure that our technology experience gets better and better. And that's the biggest thing that we can do to make sure that the future is bright. So if there's something that doesn't work for you, let the person who created it know. I'll give you a really good quick example, Jude, of an application a couple of years ago, which was really popular at the time, because what it did was it was a little Java application that ran on your PC that would let you send text messages using your web text function. Not really useful anymore because we all get unlimited free text for everything. And there's lots of other ways to communicate, of course. But at the time, I really wanted to use this app, put it onto my computer. No, it wouldn't work. JAWS wouldn't work. So wrote to the developer, not really expecting a reply. It turned out he was a one-man band living down in the west of Ireland, would you believe? Wrote to the guy on a, say, Tuesday evening, and I said, oh, you know, I've just tried using this with a piece of software. I think I was using JAWS at the time, called JAWS. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. Is there anything you can do to help? Sent it off and didn't really think I'd get a reply. Had a reply the next morning. He said he not only wanted to help, but he had gone off and downloaded a demo of JAWS and was playing with it and would come back with an update shortly. And he did, and he fixed it. So, you know, you're not only advocating for a better society for the rest of the community of people with sight loss, you're also educating the mainstream tech industry that, hey, we all use this stuff in pretty much the same way, you know? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, to be honest, that same message that you mentioned there has kind of come through a few times in recent weeks on the live events, and it is one worth continuing to kind of repeat, because if more and more people are actually feeding back information that is useful to the developers generally do want to know this kind of information anyway, and even if they don't, it's actually important to draw their attention to those issues.
Absolutely, and to say that, hey, you're a person with a disability, you have as much spending power, you're as equally as important as the next person. And the other thing is, if you don't know what the problem is, don't worry. Sometimes people feel they have to use technical language, and do you know something? It doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. I open it in my iPhone and VoiceOver is silent, or there's loads of unlabeled buttons, or whatever it is. Put it in writing, or ring them, or get onto NCBI or whoever, and there's people who will help you to make sure that your feedback goes back to the developer, and most developers are very keen to act on those things. And we are getting to a point, by the way, where not just the developers, but the manufacturers, the people who host these app stores, for example. So Google and Apple are both, to be fair to them, are both very proactive now around really pushing accessibility. So if you produce something and put it to the app store that's not accessible, they are starting to come back and say, hey, that you're excluding a percentage. Now, we have to, of course, I say all this when we have to also be aware that there are some applications that, by their nature and by the design and by the audience for whom they are made, they're not going to be accessible. And that's fine. But in so much as we can, we want to make an inclusive community that we can all be a part of.
Yeah. It's really interesting just to get your thoughts on those things as well, because a lot of those things are within kind of the reasonable things to expect, or reasonable things to hope that in the future these things will bring about some continued improvements and progress. Just to kind of finish off, we've really enjoyed talking to you, Stuart, but if there was somebody listening to this interview who is just getting to grips with changing changes in their life due to sight loss, for example, or maybe they've got somebody in the family and they're really just trying to work out how to go about it. Is there any advice that you would give to those ones?
Well, I suppose, everyone's experience is different. Everyone's journey with sight loss is going to be different. Everyone's family dynamic is different. But what I would say is take your time. You may well think about the tools you used maybe prior to sight loss. So if you're coming to terms, maybe your journey with sight loss has recently begun, maybe you used an iPhone or an iPad or an Android device previously, there's a fair chance you're going to be able to use that device, maybe albeit in a different way, but you're going to be able to do that. And I would also say, think about the things you did previously and maybe what you would like to be able to continue doing. If you said, and if this is going to be something really simple, God, I loved watching TV, but I get no enjoyment out of it anymore because I always feel I have to rely on someone, ask someone questions. Well, we have audio description. Maybe it's worth finding out, are the shows you like described? Do you have subscribed to Amazon or Netflix or one of these things where audio description is very much available? And also I would say that there are lots and lots of people out there who are only too happy to help. I think actually, if COVID-19 has taught us anything, it's given us a chance, I think, whilst we were all locked down at home, to just pause and reflect and think about life and think about those people around us and think about how we need to support each other and check in on each other and be there to offer advice and help. So think about what you used to do, what you might like to do, and how technology might be able to help you in that way. Yeah.
Very good. Well, it's certainly been really enjoyable to chat to you today, Stuart. Good to catch up and good to just be able to see the difference that technology has really made in your life, but also the kind of potential that it still has for further progress as well. Thanks very much for joining us today, Stuart. We appreciate that.
Jude, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure and hope to speak to you soon. Thank you.
Very good. So that was Stuart Lawler, and it was great to catch up with Stuart. Familiar voice to many, I'm sure, but it was really good to catch up with him, hear his experience throughout different stages of his life as well, but the kind of the effect and impact that technology really made throughout his life. So thanks again to Stuart Lawler for joining us on our live event this week. We really appreciate that. Very good. So our time is nearly up. Just time to give you a couple of reminders that if you want support on any of the subjects that we speak about on our live events, whether it's software or hardware, whether it's something that was mentioned today or previously in previous live events, or one that we haven't even covered yet, please do get in touch with NCBI Labs. You can contact the technology support line on 1850 92 30 60, or you can email labs@ncbi.ie. And remember that if you need advice or support from NCBI services on a range of different issues, you can contact our national helpline on 1850 33 43 53. That's 1850 33 43 53, or you can email info@ncbi.ie. But for today, we're pretty much finished. Just to mention as well that if you want to support our services, NCBI services, you can visit donate.ncbi.ie or you can sponsor one of our live events by emailing us at labs@ncbi.ie. So that's pretty much our show for today. But as we mentioned earlier, we've got a good show lined up for next week as well. A reminder that we're going to be covering that COVID-19 tracker app. So again, please do get your questions or comments in, your concerns about that ahead of the show next week, and we'll try and address those. In coming weeks as well, we're going to be looking at Braille technology, we're going to be looking at typing tutors, and we have a number of other subjects that we're going to look at as well. Stuart mentioned earlier about some of the accessible white goods and improvements maybe that he'd like to see in that regard, which I'm sure many would echo. Well, we're going to talk about that in a future live event as well. We'll talk about some of the kind of household goods that might be out there already, or what we'd like to see in the future as well. But all that's left for me to do today is to thank our contributors. Thanks very much to Hilary Devlin, to Colette Quinlivan, and to Stuart Lawler as well, and our panelists today as well, Sean, Daniel and JP. We really appreciate the work that's gone in behind the scenes to get our show up and running, and we look forward to seeing everybody again next week for the next NCBI Labs live event.